I used to think the worst thing a man could do was stop loving you. Turns out, he can still say, I love you, while placing your suitcase outside, right next to the trash bins. Like love was never meant to shelter you when you couldn't give him what he wanted. Hi there. If you've ever stood in the rain holding nothing but a suitcase and your breath, if someone once made you feel like your value expired with your ability to give them a child, if you've ever been told, in silence or in words, that you're too broken to be worth keeping, then this story is for you. And no, it's not about revenge. It's not even about winning something back. It's about finding something better. Quietly, unexpectedly, brick by brick, unexpectedly. Because sometimes, the person who saves you doesn't come with flowers or promises. They come with a second plate at dinner, a room that stays dry when everything else leaks, and a voice that never asks about your past. Just make sure your ask's warm now. So if you're still watching, maybe something in you is still healing. And maybe, just maybe, this story will help you believe that healing is still possible. I remember the sound of the rain before I remember his voice. It came down now, hard that afternoon, tapping on the kitchen window like it wanted to come in and see the end of us too. I had just lost my second pregnancy. The doctor's words were still hanging somewhere behind my ears. Your body's under too much stress. Maybe it in time to stop trying. But he didn't wait for grief to settle. He stood by the front door, one hand on my suitcase, the other holding a silence I didn't know how to fill. And then, with the same calm he used to read grocery lists, he said, You're not what I signed up for, then. I married you to have children, not to nurse your grief. I didn't cry, not right away. I just stood there as he placed my bag down. Not gently, just decisively, next to the trash bin, still too wet from morning rain. And then he closed the door. That was the last thing he ever gave me, a closed door. My hands were shaking. I remember that, not from fear, but from disbelief. How fast it all can change. One day you're his wife. The next, you're just someone he used to want. I didn't have a plan. My phone was at 8%, and I had nowhere to go. My parents were long gone. No siblings, no real friends. At least, not the kind you can call when you're soaked and ashamed and 38 with nothing but a bag and a scarred womb. So I walked for blocks in the rain. I passed houses with golden porches and warm lights, families preparing dinner, dogs barking behind fences. And I kept walking until I reached the Greyhound station. I didn't even buy a ticket for a destination. I just asked, what's leaving next? It was a bus to a place I hadn't been in years, a dusty town where my name didn't mean much anymore, but it was the only place I could afford, and the only place that didn't ask for explanations. I sat by the window as the city lights blurred into nightfall, and as the rain softened into mist, I whispered to no one, My baby, this is how you start over. Not by running towards something, but by walking away from what finally broke you. I didn't know it yet, but in that same town, by a pile of bricks and a quiet porch, someone else had also stopped believing in love. Until me, I arrived just before dawn. The town hadn't changed much. Same faded diner signs, same two-pumped gas station, same streets that seemed too quiet, even for morning. But it felt smaller now, or maybe I'd just grown too tired to stretch myself into it again. The room I found was above a hardware store, moldy ceiling, flickering bulb, one-way sailing, window that didn't quite shut. Rent was cheap, cash only. The landlord didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer answers. I survived the first week doing whatever people would pay for, carrying crates at the farmer's market, cleaning tools at the farmer's market, the back of a wood shop, scrubbing porches no one else wanted to kneel on. I moved through my days like fog, present, but barely noticed. One afternoon, I was sweeping outside the vegetable stand when I saw him. He walked with the heavy step of someone used to lifting more than he should. Broad shoulders, tan skin, quiet eyes. He paused by the tomatoes, picked one up, looked at me for a second too long. You're new, he said, not as a question, more like a knowing. I nodded back, really, but no one remembers. He gave a half smile. Sometimes that's a blessing. He bought 1 tomato, paid exact change, and walked off without another word. But the next day, he came back, bought 3. The day after, 5. I never saw him eat any of them. Eventually, I asked, "Are you just really into tomatoes, or are you being polite?" He shrugged. "Don't like the thought of you standing here all day with nothing to show for it." I laughed, and it startled me. I hadn't heard myself sound like that in weeks. We never spoke long, just enough to let the air between us feel less empty. He told me his name was Ethan, worked construction, lived alone, didn't say much else, but he never looked away when I talked, never asked why I was there, never made me feel like I owed him anything. Then came the night the roof gave in. A storm rolled in fast, wind tearing through the alley, water pouring down the cracked walls of my room. I was standing barefoot in a puddle when I heard a knock on the door. He stood there, dripping wet, holding a folded towel in one hand and a brown paper bag in the other. "My place is dry," he said, simply. "There's soup on the stove. You don't have to talk. Just come in." And so I did. The first thing I noticed was the quiet, not the uncomfortable kind, like walking into a waiting room where no one knows what to say. This was different. This was the kind of quiet that doesn't press you for answers. The kind that lets you sit with your breath and your past and doesn't ask you to explain either one. So, Ethan's house was small, but clean. There were little signs of routine everywhere. A dish towel folded just so, a single cup drying by the sink, boots lined up with care. He didn't ask questions, didn't hover. He just handed me a bowl of soup and said, "Eat what you can, the rest keeps." I stayed in the spare room. He never knocked unless he needed to. In the mornings, he left early for work, but there was always coffee waiting. He'd scribble little notes on the napkins beside the cup. "Rain's coming. Close the windows. Fridge makes a weird noise. Don't be scared." I hadn't seen my name written in someone else's handwriting in so long. It stopped me for a second, like my presence had quietly been accepted. I started leaving notes back, just little things. "Your shirt was still damp." I moved it to the line. "Your dog-eared book." I finished it. "Hope you don't mind." We lived like that for a while, quietly, respectfully, the kind of rhythm that sneaks up on you and starts to feel like home. I found myself waking up earlier, cooking small breakfasts, holding his work shirts without thinking. I didn't owe him that. He didn't expect it, but it felt good to do things without fear of doing them wrong. Some nights, we sat on the porch together and watched the sky change. I'd sip his beer. I'd hold tea I never quite finished. We didn't talk much, but there was warmth in that silence I hadn't known I missed. Then one evening, as I was setting down 2 plates of fried cabbage and cornbread, Ethan looked at me and said, very softly, almost stopped me and said, very softly, almost, like he was afraid I might laugh, "I've never had someone make this place feel warm. Maybe we could try making it permanent. I mean, if you'd be okay with that, Noel." I froze, one hand still holding the serving spoon. He didn't fumble to explain, didn't list reasons or promises, just sat there, open, steady, like the question had been living in him a while and was finally ready to come out. I didn't say yes right away, because my heart still flinched at words like forever. But I also didn't say no. Instead, I sat down beside him, reached for his hand and said, "Let's just keep setting the table, one meal at a time." He smiled, that quiet kind of smile that doesn't show teeth, just peace. And the next morning, he carved a thin silver band out of scrap metal from the worksite, slipped it onto my finger without ceremony, without audience. It was the only wedding I ever wanted. And the only one I ever wanted. Marriage with Ethan didn't come with cake or crowds, but it came with the smell of fresh coffee at 6 a.m., a porch that creaked just once when he stepped out, and a kind of peace I'd only seen in photographs before. We didn't talk about the past, not mine. Our home didn't talk, not mine. Have space for ghosts, only for groceries, garden tools, and soft blankets that smelled like sun. Had leave early, always with the same words. Breakfast was good. See you at 6. And most nights, he came home right at 6. Boots off at the door. A quick rinse of hands. Then he'd asked, "Didn't anyone bother you today? Did you get any rest?" Sometimes, Do you want to eat now or sit a bit? He never raised his voice, never slammed a door, and somehow that made my bones begin to unclench, slowly, like I'd been braced for impact for too many years. I started growing herbs in mismatched pots, selling homemade jams at the Sunday stall. Ethan built me a shelf for my jars, without saying a word. I sewed patches onto his jeans without asking if I should. There was no ledger, no keeping score, only the quiet rhythm of two people remembering how to live near two people remembering how to live near. Warmth again. One rainy afternoon, while changing out the sheets, I reached under the bed for a fallen pillow. My fingers grazed something hard, wooden, heavy. It was a small box, wedged deep in the shadows, dusty, locked, but the latch was loose. I shouldn't have opened it, I know that, but my fingers moved before my conscience did. Inside were 3 folded documents and a bank booklet. I unfolded them one by one, my heartbeat pulsing in my ears. 3 parcels of land, all in his name, and a savings account totaling just over $43,000. I sat back, the box still open on my lap. This man, my husband, the one who wore the same work boots every day, who patched his own jacket sleeves with a ton of mismatched thread, who packed boiled eggs and plain toast for lunch. He was not who I thought he was, or my baby was. And this was just the part I hadn't been invited into yet. Was I living beside a stranger? Or had he simply decided I'd earned peace without knowing the weight he carried? I closed the lid, placed it back where I found it, but the air in the room had shifted, and I couldn't unsee what I now knew. I tried to act normal that evening. Dinner was on the table. His plate was warm, mine too. The lights buzzed, was warm, mine too. The lights buzzed, the same soft yellow hum they always did. Gentle, familiar, but nothing felt familiar anymore. Ethan walked in right at 6, boots muddy, hair damp from the mist. He kissed my forehead like always, just a brush, like asking permission. But then he paused. Something wrong. I didn't answer. I poured his tea, sat down across from him, and when he reached for the salt, I said it. Calm, steady. I found the box. He didn't blink, didn't ask which one, just slowly set his fork down. And I'm angry, I added. Softer now. Just not sure what it means. He leaned back in his chair, rubbed his hands together like trying to shake off sawdust. And then he exhaled, like letting go of a weight that had lived in his chest for years. I used to be someone else, he began. Had my own company, built homes, offices, even a little cabin by the lake. A silence passed. I got married, he said. She left, he nodded, but not before emptying the accounts. Took my clients, forged the deed to our house, left me with the shell of a life and my name in too many courtrooms. His voice was flat, not bitter, just exhausted from remembering. I moved into the skeleton of a build I never finished. Ate what I could, didn't sleep much, stared at the ceiling a lot. A beat. One night, I climbed up to the roof, thought maybe I'd just step off. My breath caught, but I didn't, he continued, because my mom showed up middle of the night, no questions, just soup. She sat with me till morning, 6 hours. Didn't say a word. She didn't fix it, just made it possible to survive the next day. He looked at me then, eyes softer than I'd ever seen. She passed last year, left me the land, the money, the years of odd jobs. And not needing much, I swallowed hard. And me? What was I to you? You were someone who didn't ask me what I used to be. You just let me be who I was, and why not tell me? He paused, because I was afraid that if you knew, you'd think I was trying to buy your staying. I never needed buying, I said quietly. He nodded. I know, that's why I married you. The words landed gently, but they reached deep, deeper than I knew anything could still go. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. We just sat there in the same quiet kitchen, 2 people with frayed edges, finally laying them on the table. And for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't holding my breath. I was on solid ground, and I believed it would hold. We never spoke about the box again, not because we were avoiding it, but because some truths, once named, don't need repeating. They just settle out between 2 people like an old quilt, worn but warm. trusted. After that night, something shifted, not in a dramatic way, just in a little spaces. I'd reach for my hand a second longer. I'd hum while hanging laundry. We started making plans without realizing they were plans. Where to plant blueberries next spring, how to retile the kitchen floor without breaking the bank. He showed me the land his mother left him, 3 wide patches of earth just outside town, lined with cottonwoods and birdsong. I was going to live out here alone, he said. Maybe build a 1-room cabin, grow a few tomatoes, die quiet. He looked at me, but now I'm thinking, 2 rooms, maybe a porch swing. We stood in the field until the light changed. We didn't dream big. We just built small, deliberate, lasting. He drew plans in the evenings, pencil smudges on paper held down with coffee mugs. I circled paint colors in old magazines, started a notebook labeled Our Little Garden. He never planned a future before, only ever survived one day at a time. But now, my steps had direction, my silence had company, one morning. My stomach turned at the smell of eggs. I thought it was bad oil, or nerves, or the flu. But 3 days later, when Ethan made fresh toast, and I had to run outside before it finished popping, I knew. I didn't tell him right away. I walked into town, bought 2 test kits just to be sure, stared at the results like they were lying. Pregnant. I sat on the edge of our bed for what felt like hours. After 2 miscarriages, I had stopped believing my body could hold life, stopped dreaming of the word mother as anything but a scar, and now, here it was, unasked for, undemanded, a quiet gift from a body that had finally felt safe. Maybe safety isn't loud, maybe it's just what lets a body remember. Had I told him Ethan didn't speak, he just looked at me, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, then pulled lightly on me into his chest. His arms wrapped around me slowly, like I was something fragile. Then he whispered, "Even without a child, you're everything. But if life gives us one, I'll spend the rest of mine earning that miracle." I cried into his shirt, not because I was scared, but because, for the first time, we didn't call anyone. We didn't post it. We just sat on the porch that evening, hands entwined, watching the sun roll down behind the trees. He didn't say much, just held my hand a little tighter. And in that stillness, I felt a life beginning, quietly, steadily, the way all good things do. These days, the mornings are quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't ache, just a gentle hum of birds, of wind, of birds, of wind, of a life finally unfolding at its own pace. I rise before the sun does. The kettle whistles soft and crooked from the den. Ethan gave it chasing off a raccoon. He's always one step ahead, boots by the door, firewood stacked, coffee warming. He doesn't say much in the mornings. He doesn't have to. I step outside sometimes just to listen. To the soil breathing, to the porch settling, to the sound of a home that was never promised, but showed up anyway. The baby's not here yet, but already I talk to them like they are, telling them about their father, how he never raised his voice, but always raised the roof when it leaked, how he didn't ask me to be strong, just asked if I'd eaten. We didn't get here through grand gestures. We got here because he stayed, because he saw me in my smallest, most cracked self, and never flinched. I keep a little notebook now, not for stories, just moments. The way he hums when fixing a hinge, the way the porch smells after rain, the way I don't hold my breath anymore. Someday, when our child asks me if I was ever rich, I'll say yes, I was rich the day someone saw me, not as broken, not as burdened, but as enough. And if you're listening right now from somewhere far or near, if your life feels like the pieces no longer fit, then let me tell you, you are not what left you. You are not what was taken. You are not your silent rooms or unanswered prayers. You are still here, still soft, becoming. And sometimes, the life you thought ended was simply waiting for a quieter soil to begin.